Greetings, fellow Kerbonauts! Nerdy Spaceman here, in for another installment of A Beginner's Guide to Kerbal Space Program. And in this episode, we're gonna go build a rocket, a simple one, not too complicated, but we're gonna focus on attaching docking ports to it, and launching two of them and docking them in space, just like the Mercury missions when they did the first docking in space, just to see if it can be done. And in this one, we'll definitely do it. Docking is actually pretty hard if you've never done it before, and after you get it done that first time, it just seems magically easier after that first time. So it's just that first time that's really hard. After that, you get a kind of feel for it, and it starts becoming easier and easier every time. But that first time is pretty hard. So anyways, let's go to Specialized Construction and unlock the docking port. There it is, first part of the process. Now what we're gonna need to move around and everything in space is we're going to have the RCS engines in flight control and advanced flight control. They give you the RCS thruster blocks and the burner engine and monopropellant tanks, because that's what RCS is. And they're the little puffs of gas you see in spaceships that help you reorient. And while we're at it, let's get some bigger rocket parts because we got the science for it. So mainsail liquid fuel engine, it's the strongest, or I mean one of the strongest engines for this diameter rocket that we've been building, so that's always good. Advanced fuel system, that gives us the biggest tank of this diameter that we've been building, so that's good. Let's see what else we got here. Ooh, precision engineering, that's going to give us the octagonal strut. These things are tiny little struts that poke out of the craft a little bit when you put them on, and they're excellent for strutting up your craft because we're going to need struts all over the place to secure it from jiggling itself to pieces. So, precise engineering. And just for fun, we're going to add here advanced electrics for the new solar panels. These are the foldable ones, just like the deployable thermal units, the ones that like flare out. We're just going to have solar panels as well, so it's going to look nice. Okay, so I think that should be good enough, so let's go building this thing. Now, I'm going to be using recycling pretty much the asp. Solid part, the core of the asp, the center bit here, because this re-entry vehicle is really just awesome in every way. I'm gonna strip all of the little asparagus stages over here though, because we just don't need them. We also don't need the legs, and we won't need the lights for landing. We'll need other lights for docking, but for landing we won't really need them. And in this, I'm gonna essentially keep this roughly the same. I'm going to upgrade the solar panels, because these are the weak, gimpy ones, and we're going to replace them with the foldable ones. They come in two different dimensions. I like the 1x6, because they, when they unfold, they look pretty, they're thin and they don't get in the way of stuff, so long as this surface area isn't impeded all the way out to where the solar panel extends, you'll be fine. So there, we're going to put those there, and what else? Oh, right, we need a docking port. That's what we're doing. So I'm going to get rid of this parachute and throw the docking port on top here. So that's going to be our docking port. And we're still going to need parachutes, so I'm going to go ahead and add 2 parachutes of the radial kind off to the side here. And then I'm going to go ahead and fix my staging. There we go. And I'm going to combine those two because they're on the same level. Okay, so far so good. Now, what we're going to definitely need for docking in space is we're going to need RCS fuel. It comes a little bit, monopropellant will come a little bit with the lander can. Every command pod comes with a TAD, but you don't need, the TAD's not going to be enough. We're going to need a little bit more. So I'm going to put 2 more of these tanks here off to the side there, and that should be just fine for us. We're not going to use like excessive amounts of this stuff, but 15 is definitely too little. These are 60 each, so you can imagine how much more we have. Now, how do you actually use monopropellant? Well, firstly, you have to put the control units on, and these control units are actually most efficient when you put them around the center of mass. So here's our center of mass. You can see how it fluctuates as we burn gas. So right now we have an empty tank. Center mass is all the way up there. You fill it up, center mass goes all the way down here. So essentially somewhere in the middle here, maybe on the RCS port, would be like the best place to put the thrusters. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, and I'm going to do this over here. I guess that's good enough. And then I'm going to add the burner engine And we're going to add that over here as well. And there we go, we're good to go. Now there's two different kinds. These little thrusting ones, they're not as powerful, but they give you multiple directions, notably forward and back. Those are useful. The rotational ones, not so much. These ones push out on the craft, so essentially when you have a puff of gas, monopropellant gas coming out of this hole, the whole craft is going to shift over to the left. Kind of like your jetpack in when you're in EVA mode on your little Kerbal. Those use monopropellant RCS boosters. That's what they use. So essentially we're giving this whole rocket a little jetpack that lets us maneuver around and fly all over the place. And that's going to be great for us. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this on here. And I'm going to go to structural and add the octagonal strut, the cubic octagonal strut. I'm going to go right over there. And this isn't like a super heavy part. It's just going to be used for structural purposes. It's going to make this whole rocket more rigid. So I'm going to put 4 more down here. And I'm going to run struts between them. So what I'm doing now is I'm essentially connecting this piece, this bottom piece, all the way to this top piece here. Every single rocket, when you build them, they're made up of multiple stages, right? Multiple parts, right? So you get the engine, fuel tank, SAS, fuel tank, SAS, and between each of these parts, there's a layer, like a medium between them. That medium bends ever so slightly. And so when you have a whole bunch of stuff stacked on top of each other, each of those little bends, they start to add up, and you eventually get the whole thing to bow out, like, you know, bend like a banana pretty much. It starts to jiggle and wobble all over the place, and it gets more and more difficult to control. So when you do this, you're essentially connecting this bottom fuel tank directly to this top fuel tank, and all these stages here, you essentially ignore them because they're suspended between the two of them. So they're just doing their own thing. There's no real weight or pressure or anything applied to them. They're floating between these two because they're kept perfectly spaced apart by these struts. Now these struts also bend a little bit based on the parts that they're attached to, but it's a lot less than all of these parts here combined. And you can always add more of these struts. You can add like 6, 7, 8, however many you want, but usually 4, something like that for this kind of a design really is just quite fine. So anyways, let's go down. Instead of building out, I say we keep going and we build and take advantage of our big old fuel tank here, which is pretty much just 2 of these over here. But we're gonna use the brand new mainsail engine. This thing is wicked strong. It is extremely powerful. This thing has got twice the thrust that the skipper has, so it's twice as powerful. So essentially we could use 2 of these stacked on top of each other roughly. And so it's essentially 2 of these engines. So we can put 2 rockets with 1 mainsail and it'll push both of them up, as opposed to one of these little engine skippers. So it's very powerful. But we don't need to go very far. We just need to push it off the launch pad, get us moving and out of the atmosphere at least a little bit before this runs out of fuel. So there we go. Now, one little addition. What we're going to do is we're going to alt-click on that strut. And then we're going to go down, I don't know, this is far enough. There it is. That's not what I wanted. I wanted it here. Thank you. And that's connected this. So essentially what we're doing is this piece is connected directly to this piece, which is connected directly to this piece. Or another way of looking at it is the bottom piece is connected directly to the top piece. And these are all just independent of each other. So this rocket's not going to wobble and jiggle itself to pieces. That's good. Now, next on the list is we're going to have to add some deluxe winglets. And there we go. And then we're going to add some structural stability enhancers right there. And stage them up properly. And this stage isn't going to last very long. And once it's off the launch pad and we've got it pointing in the right direction, we're going to need to keep it flying in that direction. So I'm going to go ahead and add these little fins just for safety's sake. And then we can always check our center mass and center lift. Everything's good to go. Now, one final thing that I'm going to add to this. In space, it is dark. It is very dark. It was one of the first issues that Mercury had when they first went out there to dock. They first noticed it was dark. That was the first thing they noticed. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some lights on this craft. We're going to put 2 of these, and then 2 of these. Oh, come on. Come on. Get attached. Okay, so these are pretty wide. If you would attach, thank you. Oh, come on now. There it is. There we go. So, we've got ourselves some lights. This is going to help us illuminate when we get close to the craft, so we can actually see what we're docking to. because it sucks not being able to see anything. So there it is. We're good to go. You know what? I don't like how this looks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shift them down here. I think that looks better. Yeah. There we go. That's much better. They're not as close to it. They're not getting in the way and stuff. Okay, there we go. So essentially, again, we've added lights that are going to illuminate when we're coming in for docking. They're going to illuminate our docking port. And again, we're going to have two of these rockets. And we're going to launch them back to back. One's going to get to orbit, and the other one's going to get to orbit. So we're going to call this the Lance Mark 3. There we go. That's great. And I made a prototype earlier that I'm overriding now. So there it is. We've got the Lance Mark 3, and it is good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and get out of here. Now, what we're going to do, which is the ultimate goal for docking, is we're going to unlock this part over here, the mobile processing lab. This mobile processing lab is going to essentially be a science research facility up in space. And you can take newly gathered science and throw it in this mobile processing lab and throw two engineers inside of it, or not engineers, two scientists inside of it, and they will churn away the science. They'll look at the science and study it and analyze it and do everything and essentially multiply the effects. So if you collect a science, materials, experiment, and it's worth maybe 100 science points when you recover it, instead, if you bring it to one of these things and you begin researching it, it'll start multiplying how much it gives you. So it can give you, twice or 3 or 4 times as much science, and it's all based on where the mobile processing lab is. So the farther away, the general idea is the farther away from Kerbin it is, the more science it gives you per, experiment. So we want to put this in orbit around, I don't know, probably around Minmus and the moon. Throw them in orbit around those moons, and then land and dump science directly into this place. But to dump it into there, you need to be able to dock. That makes everything a whole lot simpler. So we're going to do that, and that's how we're going to practice docking. But these things require 2 scientists. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and find ourselves 2 scientists. Here's Valissa and Foma. There we go. Now these Kerbals actually aren't 0 levels, they're actually max level. It's not in the game. It doesn't show you right away. When we start up the next video, you'll see that they're definitely of the same rank, same everything. So they're maxed out and everything in level. Okay, so I say, since we've got a little bit of time left, why don't we just launch the first rocket and put it in orbit, getting prepared for the next mission. So Lance Mark 3. Get Valissa in there, I guess the first one, and launch it. Might as well change things up. We don't need Bob. So yeah, now I'm bringing science experiments on these, and I'm bringing my scientists just in case we land on our return. We land someplace new, someplace different. So yeah, might as well collect some science on the way back. You never know. Plus, we're gonna have a whole bunch of fuel because this is an extremely fuel-efficient rocket. It's a simple design, so simple usually gets you a lot farther than complicated. So this is gonna do us great. We're gonna do just fine with this rocket. So there we are. We're way past 100. I've been yapping too much, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a gravity turn. And there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and tilt to 5 degrees. It should be about right. Because this is a heavy rocket. Heavy rockets usually don't need a lot of tilt. And in essence, we're not trying to be as fuel efficient as possible. We're trying to gain as much height as possible. We want our orbit to be nice and high. We don't want to have an orbit that's really close to the atmosphere because we want room to maneuver. We want room to have an orbit below and above it so that we can catch up or fall, slow down to different orbits and, interacting with each other. So this is nice. First stage is done, and it's got to start it off with a pretty good speed. We then pretty much stop accelerating and then start picking up again as we burn more fuel. But we're way past the thicker parts of the atmosphere, so now it's just the easy part. So from this point forth, it's pretty much just easy. The bottom stage, again, just lifts us off the ground and gets us moving, and then the top stage here gets us into orbit, and the final stage will circularize and line us up and everything like that. So that's what we're going to do. Open up my map view and go ahead and watch out how I go. Now, ideally, we're looking for something like 200,000 meters, or even 250. You know, something crazy high, because if you're too close to the atmosphere, one, you don't have enough room to wiggle, but two, more importantly, you don't have any time warp. So if you need to catch up and it's going to take some time without having time warp, it's going to just take forever. And you know, I don't want to make videos that are too long. I'm going to lose your guys' attention span, so I got to keep you guys focused. But anyways, we're making good progress. We've already hit the orbit point, so we're already pretty high up in the atmosphere, and our Apoapsis is about to hit space, so that's good. We're off to a good start. We're still full. There we go, half tank. There we go, we're halfway through this stage, so things are looking up for us. It's only going to get faster and faster from here on out. See here, the speed's going to grow. And we're going to get higher and higher. Again, here we are. We've hit Apoapsis, hit the atmosphere, but we're going to go way, way, way past that. We don't need, you know, to have like a nice fuel efficient low close orbit. We're trying to practice docking, and docking mistakes happen, and you don't want to mess everything up. You don't want to be too you know, close and too tight unless you know exactly what you're doing. You need to give yourself some space to breathe. There we go. We're starting to have tiny bits of heating issues going on here. That's fine. We're gonna hit space soon too. Here it is. Here comes space. And we're in space. Still haven't. Oh, there it is. We're gonna get some heating going on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and deploy my radiators just to get rid of that heating issue that we were developing. And we're gonna get to, let's say, 200,000. No, I want to get to more. I want to get to 250. Just get way up there. See, 275. I don't know. There it is. 275 is a good number. We want to get really high. You want to get as much time warp ability as you can possibly get. And then I'm going to set a maneuver node way up here. Okay, come on now. And it is going to loop around. Come on, come on. And there it is. Okay, point to our maneuver node. And it's an 11-second burn. I hope we don't have enough fuel, because I don't want to have that bottom stage. So I'm praying that I don't have enough fuel. Alright, there we go. We're going way high. Look at that. That is just crazy high up into space, because we want as much room as possible. We don't want to be screwing up and hitting the atmosphere. That's not good. Okay, so here we go. And okay, and here we go. Putting on our maneuver node, getting up out of there. Eventually we get our periapsis. Perfect. We're out of fuel for this stage. Excellent. Easy with the gimbal. Easy. There. And finally, we are now here, and do the last little push. And here we are. We've got pretty much circular. Excellent. That's all we have time for. And I'm gonna go ahead and just where is it? Wait, no, can't be in here. There it is. Here it is. I'm gonna go back to the space center, and by doing that, we're leaving this in space. It's just in space, minding its own business, and we'll get back to it in a later episode so that we can go dock with it. This has been Nerdy Spaceman. Stay safe and fly far.